in general, you move toward opportunity. You have a willingness to make mistakes. You have a willingness to fail. That willingness to fail, that optimism, is really what drives really good outcomes, really good decision making. Mm-hmm. And fear and pessimism drive really bad decisions.
Hey everyone, super excited to share this episode with you. Today we get to go deep into the mind and thought process of legendary billionaire startup investor Tim Draper. This will be a great episode for both new and seasoned investors to really cultivate a fearless and forward-thinking investment mindset to make decisions that will yield the best returns for you. It's also super cool to hear about Tim's vision for the future 15 years out, especially around how government structures and economic systems will have to evolve and open up to start serving people rather than trying to control people. So in this episode, you are going to learn how to choose the right industries to invest in and spot technological waves, the 4-step framework that Tim uses for choosing the best startup companies to invest in, how to recognize and invest in great founders and great startup business models, and how to not allow fear and negative news cycles to dictate your investment decisions. As Tim says, if you're not making money, you're not doing anybody any favors. So let's get into it and learn the power of investing without fear. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm here with Tim Draper, the legendary Silicon Valley venture capitalist and founder of Draper Associates, DFJ, and the Draper Venture Network, a global network of venture capital funds with investments that include Baidu, Skype, Hotmail, Tesla, SolarCity, Robinhood, SpaceX, Carta, and many others. He is a leading spokesperson for Bitcoin, blockchain, ICOs, and cryptocurrencies, and is invested in over 50 crypto companies, as well as leads investments in Coinbase, Ledger, Tezos, among others. He created the concept of viral marketing that was instrumental to the success of Hotmail and Skype, and he is also the founder of Draper University of Heroes to teach entrepreneurship and position students for real-world success. Tim, welcome to The Confident Investor.
Great. Thanks for having me on your show, Lisa. I hope I become more confident.
Well, you have certainly had so much success in your investments across so many different sectors, from autonomous vehicles to solar energy to Bitcoin to fintech platforms. And I'm just curious, in the beginning, how did you even choose what industries you were interested in and where you were going to invest your energy and time?
Well, way back when, I guess the way I look at it is I sort of catch waves. So like when the internet came, I was able to jump on that wave, and it rode, and it transformed a number of different industries. So new technology waves transform a group of industries. And so media, communications, gaming, entertainment, information, they all had a big transformation because of the internet. The computer transformed some industries like word processing and spreadsheets and that kind of thing. And then after the internet, marketplaces came along, and they transformed transportation and hotels and a number of other fields that have yet to come out. And now with Bitcoin, blockchain, smart contracts combined with artificial intelligence and surveillance, the biggest industries in the world are about to get transformed. So this is the biggest technological wave we've ever seen. And so I didn't realize that I was going to have the most fun ever at this point in my life. I didn't realize, I thought, well, I've had a kind of a nice career with the internet. Well, now I can't imagine a more exciting time. The biggest industries of the world are getting transformed. We're even, I mean, I'll get into it later, I imagine, but we're even going to a anthropological leap where we go from tribal to global, and I can explain that later on if you'd like. Um, we're going through a major transformation of the world economy, of the world, um, the openness of business. There's so many interesting things happening in the world today, and I can't imagine being more excited about investing into this world.
Well, I mean, there's so much about the transformation that I would love to dig into, just the nuances of how you look at that. But for our audience, who are people who are interested in perhaps making their first investments, they're not exactly sure which industries they should dig into. How did you initially get started? What really drives your curiosity or drives your motivation for creating change through investments?
I was always a kinesthetic learner, which meant I had to do stuff in order to learn. And then I would go read about it. I would do something and then I go read about it. So a lot of people read about it first and then decide whether to do it. So I would say to the investors out there, the would-be investors, the best way to learn about an industry is to take a risk. Try it, but make it a small risk. Don't bankrupt yourself on one investment, and particularly if you're doing startups or angel investing. It's actually probably better to invest in a venture fund like Draper Associates than it is for your returns than to try to be an angel and to pick one. I mean, we see 20,000 companies a year and we choose 20 of them to invest in. As an investor, you would be up against that. But as an investor, when you put your money down, you immediately learn a ton. You learn a ton about that entrepreneur. They usually open up to you after you've put some money into them, no matter what size the check is. And you learn a lot about that industry because suddenly you realize that there are 5 competitors and some are ahead and some are behind. And then you start understanding the customers and how they are thinking and what might come next. And I think then your investment decisions get to be more and more valuable as you learn more. And so I would say to build a confident investor, they've got to be willing to take that risk, that first step. And then when you take the first step, you've got to dig in, learn. You learn a lot from failures and you learn even more from successes. And the whole process is a learning process. I can't say that I know exactly what I'm doing now, even though I've been doing it for 30 something years. So I think you've just got to take that leap. And the women out there, they really need to force themselves to risk because they tend not to be willing to take a risk with their money. That is a mistake. It is a risk reward activity, and you do want to take a risk or you will, in effect, not get the reward.
Yeah.
Particularly now, they've printed $12 trillion. So if you're sitting on dollars, you're making a huge mistake. You've just lost 20% of your value overnight. So it's a risk not to do this. It's a risk not to take a chance. I remember the people coming out of business school. I went to Harvard Business School, and coming out of Harvard Business School, the people who were out doing the crazy things, the risky things, by the 10th reunion, they were the heroes of the class. And the ones doing the safe things, by the 10th reunion, they were asking for jobs of the other people. So safety and security are an illusion. I mean, God, imagine if you thought, oh, I got a great safe job as a waitress in a restaurant, and then COVID hits. All of a sudden, your life is shocked. But if you were a risk taker and you were saying, hey, I want to try something completely new, your life might be enhanced by some crisis like a COVID.
What I'm hearing is that there needs to be a fundamental reframing of risk, and that what a lot of people perhaps don't understand, especially I think if they didn't come from a background where money was abundant, is that when you are actually just sitting on your money, it is not only not working for you, it is actually diminishing in value every day that you let it sit there. Is that correct?
Well, certainly now. And if you were in Argentina, you'd understand this completely because the Argentinian peso is like the hot potato. I met with the president of Argentina, and I told him all about Bitcoin, and he nodded his head. And then 2 years later, I came back and I said, since the last time I talked to you, Bitcoin's gone from 10,000 down to 4,000. But the Argentinian peso has gone from 75 cents down to 25 cents. I'll make you a bet that if the Argentinian peso does better than Bitcoin, I'll double my investment in Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin does better, you make Bitcoin a national currency here because no one wants the Argentinian peso. And when you have a currency that's a hot potato, nobody works for the future. They don't want to aggregate value. So that everything's short term, and then nobody trusts anybody, and then you have a spiraling down society. Well, he didn't bet me. He lost the election, and now the Argentinian peso is worth less than 1 penny, down from 25 cents to 1 cent. And Bitcoin has gone back up to $12,000. So I think this is just a great example of, now, so if you lived in Argentina, you would understand that if you're trying to build long-term value, you don't do it on a currency that has an inflationary piece to it. And the dollar didn't have inflation for a long time. Now it's going to have rampant inflation. And you are not going to want to hold on to your dollars. You're going to want to invest them.
I think one of the things that's really important when you're investing is keeping in mind what you see the future as. And I think sometimes the mistake is that your tunnel vision is only the present moment, and you're allowing the emotions and the fear to dictate, when everyone runs this way, you run the same way. So how do you create a vision of the future that you want to invest in? And then what's your thought process for vetting out the different companies that might fit that vision?
That's the best question you could ask. In the book Dune, Frank Herbert writes, fear is the mind killer. And this great president of Uruguay, who I just spoke with, said, fear kills an economy. Fear destroys everything. And when you watch the news, I did this, I experimented. I watched the local news and I counted how many stories there were and how many were driven by fear. There were 13 stories in the local news this half hour. All 13 were driven by fear. They were spreading fear into your head. So the first thing you've got to do is get rid of that fear. Don't be a victim. Don't let the news drive you into whatever they're deciding is a hot button right now. I mean, just because there's a shiny object over here doesn't mean that you go to every shiny object. Don't run. And you said it just right. You said, do I run from whatever it is? I've got to go from whatever this is because it's scary not to run with a pack. Well, to be an investor, you've got to project out. And if you're a venture capital investor, you got to project out 15 years. You've got to understand what the world's going to look like then, not what the news is telling you now. Or you'd like invest in a bunch of masks when the COVID thing comes, and then you invest in a Black Lives Matter, and then you invest in, the election, and then you invest in whatever they're telling you right now. It's like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do that. You never make money that way. You never make money fast. for one. So you don't want to quickly chase anything. You make money slowly. You make money thinking, what's the world going to look like in 10 years? And or if you're a public investor, 5 years. How's the world going to look in those 5 years? Are we still going to be using the Apple smartphone? Are we still going to be searching Google? Are we still going to be putting our stuff up on Facebook? Are we still going to be using Netflix? Or is there going to be something else? Those are the questions I think you should be asking. And then think, here's the other thing to invest in. Think, what do you want the world to look like in 5 to 10 years? And back that. My daughter wrote this great article about how she's raising money and raised money for her third venture fund, only backing women. And some of the men she went to thought it was a charity. And the article says, this is not a fucking charity. That's the headline. And some of the men were just hitting on her. And the women wouldn't take the risk on women, on backing women. I mean, it was and she's done incredibly well. She's outperformed because, hey, women who start businesses, they're pretty unique. They're extraordinary. And so generally we will overweight on women because if they're starting businesses, they must really feel this in some very deep way. And they're going to do everything in their power to make it successful. And so, I think that there should be, like, if you want women to run businesses, back entrepreneurial women, back my daughter's venture fund, Halogen Ventures, back what you want the world to look like 10 years from now or 15 years from now. And then it will get there. If you're concerned with global warming, back the companies that are going to make it better. If you're concerned with jobs, world poverty, back businesses that will increase employment. I mean, if you want Africa to boom, back Africa.
Yeah. So there's really
the thing that you want the world to look like.
There are 3 things that I took away from all that you said. So the first point I want to emphasize is this idea of patience, right? There's no get rich quick scheme. There's no hack to all of this, especially when it comes to investing. And the other 2 things that I think were really insightful are so essentially the way that you look at these investments, there's kind of 2 sides. There's this macro of how do you think the world will look based off of psychological drivers, right? How people are going to behave, different patterns and progressions of human nature, essentially. And the second is that personal conviction in what do you want. So it's like actually creating your own opinions around your own convictions of where you would like to have a hand in shaping the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all. You got all of that. And I think the other thing is don't watch the news.
Yeah.
And fear is the mind killer. If you just watch the news and parrot that to all your friends, you're not doing anybody any favors.
Yeah.
Just because there are a bunch of people, that are obsessed with this coronavirus doesn't mean you have to be. Yeah. If everybody's obsessed with Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean you have to be. Just because the election's going one way or another, it doesn't mean you have to get involved. Think through what you want out of the world and back that. If your Black Lives Matter, back Black entrepreneurs. Make them successful. Help them become successful. Back the companies that are run by Blacks. I mean, if you really think that that's the way you want to go, that's what you do. And so I think you really, I guess it's put your money where your mouth is, but don't fear.
Mm.
Fear loses more money. Oh my God. Every time I've been driven by fear, the decision was the worst decision I ever made. Whenever I was driven by opportunity, it was a great decision.
Mm.
But no, actually, not all of those. Those work about part of the time. But in general, you move toward opportunity. You have a willingness to make mistakes. You have a willingness to fail. But that willingness to fail, that optimism, is really what drives really good outcomes, really good decision making. Mm-hmm. And fear and pessimism drive really bad decisions.
I just got an image in my head of when you're talking about fear and the echo chamber of news. It's kind of like a pinball machine where if you're in that chamber, you're just pinging around with whatever is, on the side of the little pinball machine. And so what you need to actually do is just realize that there's a much greater world outside of that little machine, and you just need to get out of it. So I actually don't, I try not to read a lot of news or watch anything, and just create enough space in my mind to actively choose the information that I want to consume to shape my views.
Yeah, I read like The Economist once a week, and then I read financial, what's that thing? Whenever I'm on an airplane, the Financial Times. I like the news that sort of comes out that's sort of global, and you get a good perspective on things. But the news that's daily, I mean, they're there to hook you. It's like watching a soap opera, and it's like they got to catch you. They hook you with the virus, and then they keep pounding the virus, and like everybody runs scared. And oh my God, I got to stay in place. I got to wear a mask. I got to, and of course the government officials are loving this. They're thinking, I get to keep them in place. I like to control them. They're my people. I get to do all this stuff. As opposed to a good leader educates the population. They say, hey, there's this virus. It's coming. You probably should, keep your distance, maybe wear a mask. But a bad government says, you got to lock down, no restaurants, no bars, no whatever. That's a bad government. No schools. That's a really bad government. In fact, that is creating more deaths than the virus. The lockdown, the UN has calculated that the lockdown is going to create 135 million deaths from starvation, whereas the virus itself is only 1 million.
Yeah.
135 million deaths from starvation because of the lockdown, not because of the virus. The virus is 1 million deaths around the world. And so the governments go, hey, you don't want to waste a good crisis. That's what they've done. They've enhanced their own power, put us all at their mercy, and made us kind of do their bidding. And it's a huge mistake. Huge. This is the biggest policy mistake in the history of the world.
So I want to bring it back to, we don't want to make decisions from fear. We want to make decisions from an educated, macro, thoughtful, and patient perspective. I imagine that you have tons of companies that are pitching you constantly, and your various venture funds. What is most important to you? As what are the factors that you consider? How does a company move from, let's just start from the very beginning. How do they even hook your interest?
Yeah, I'm different from other venture capitalists in this way. A lot of venture capitalists say, well, what are the problems and what could go wrong and whatever. I mean, I just assume there are plenty of things that can go wrong if you're just, a girl, a guy, and a dog getting a business started. That stuff's going to happen. But what I ask is the question, what if it goes right? What if everything goes this way? what does the world look like then? And if that's a great positive image for me, and if they've figured out a really interesting technology that goes after that market, that's a great thing. Then I work with a company often to build the right business model for that business to get there. Because, you hear a lot of weird stuff, but if you're not making money, you're not doing anybody any favors. The business has to figure out, how do we make money? What is the business model? How is the customer going to pay us? That is absolutely mission critical. And the reason is, if you're not making money, you're going to be one of those people on the street, and you're going to be the problem. And if you are making money, you can take your world and project it out to the rest of the world. You can take every customer that pays you, gives you more money to go out and grow your business and spread your good word around. So I am always looking for, what if it works? How great could this be? What if it works?
When you're
then I say, are they catching a technological wave? It's great. The internet was a new technology. It transformed communications, information, gaming, entertainment, media. Eventually, when it turned into marketplaces, it transformed hotels and travel and cars and all that. Huge transformations. Now we have a new wave coming, and it's the Bitcoin, blockchain, smart contracts, artificial intelligence, surveillance technology. It's those technologies are coming. They're going to affect some of the biggest industries in the world: banking, insurance, government, real estate, healthcare. They're all going to go through major transformations. That is what gets me so excited about the future. And why this is so much fun as an investor, to be able to take that technology and apply it to all those great industries. Great things can happen. So that's the second thing I'm looking for. The first thing was, what if it works? Second thing, is this a technological wave that is going to affect an industry? There are other industries that are going to be affected directly, like the blockchain is going to affect accounting. Smart contracts are going to affect the legal business. Surveillance combined with an actuary is going to affect the insurance business. We have these technologies there. If you figure out how to apply them to an industry you're comfortable with, this is going to be a great thing for you. Then I meet the people and I say, why are you doing this? What are you thinking? And most people will back away and go, I don't know. Somebody thought it was a good idea, or I thought I'd make money, or thought I'd make you money, or whatever. That isn't enough. It has to be in their heart and soul. It has to be like, my heart pounds to make this happen. I have to feel it. I have to drive it. I have to believe it. And I have to be willing to dedicate my life to this. And that's what an entrepreneur has to do. And then they have to think, the best entrepreneurs in the world that have ever walked the face of the earth are all focused on delighting the customer. That's it. That's all they care about. How do I delight that customer? Then the money comes in, then I can grow my service and I can spread it around the world, and I can create the world that I envision. And then we'll look at competition and we'll say, who else out there is doing it? And maybe there's a better entrepreneur in our minds, but you can beat them. You can beat the better entrepreneur if you're totally into it.
Have you ever had the experience where the person is so convicted, so passionate, but maybe their business model isn't quite right, or let's say some of the first few factors you mentioned, maybe it's not the wave that you're excited about. It's not the technological wave that you want to invest in, but that person is just so convicted. Is there a way that you would work with that person or help them navigate to a different model or company.
Right. Yeah, I've never heard the word convicted used that way, but I kind of like it. Um, I yes is the answer, because sometimes really extraordinary people can go into an industry and find that niche and then wedge into that industry and grow that industry. Um, uh, it's better when they are applying technology. I mean, we backed. I wasn't thinking that I would get into fashion in Southeast Asia, but Zalingo, the woman, came to me and she said, "This is what I'm doing." And then she showed me how she uses artificial intelligence to understand her customer better and know exactly what they're going to want and project out what they're going to want and then go back and build it. Once that cycle was created, I knew that we had something, our big winner there with Zalingo. Yes, that entrepreneur can make a difference. Here's the other thing. If they don't have it quite right, when they meet with me, I'm usually a little blind to their future. I don't understand how they'll ever make it. But I have noticed that it tends to be the 25th pitch to a venture capitalist that nails it. And what that means is the entrepreneur has to go through the process, and the business model improves every time they hit a new venture capitalist. They give the pitch, and then it makes them think about what it is they're saying. And then the next time they go, we really should change this. And then that changes. And then the next time something else changes, something else changes, something else changes. And eventually you've got a business that any venture capitalist would be lucky to get into. Mm. And I think so starting something is very much a trial and error experience. Having the initial vision is such a small part of it, but having that conviction is a great part of it, because you know that with that conviction, you will go and meet with 25 venture capitalists. You will improve your pitch. You will improve the customer experience and eventually have a great business. So, yeah, I think that answers your question.
And I think that goes the same way, this process of iteration for new investors. It's also doing multiple investments, learning from your own mistakes, as if companies don't go the way you want to. So I think it's on both sides of the table, right?
Yeah, I think if you're an investor, you have the benefit of diversifying and putting the money into a number of different companies. As an entrepreneur, you are not diversified. You are full bore. That's your business. That's where it's going. But the good part about that is you also control your life. Mm. As an investor, you have a lot less control. You're not trying to control the company. You shouldn't be trying to control the companies you back. You should just be saying, I have faith in you. Here you go.
Mm. When you're evaluating the business model, we talked about the company has to make money. And the thing is, we see a lot of these big companies and they're still not.
But if you grab distribution, that's also a valuable way to start. But long term, you've got to be thinking, how does this thing make money? Yeah, if you're backing a public company that's not making money, I think you should pull your money out.
For startup,
once they're in the billions of market cap, they've got the distribution. They should be making money.
Well, at the early stage, if you're investing in startups, what is the time horizon that is kind of the sweet spot where a company should start making some money?
Well, they should think about it right away. But there are some models like Hotmail and Skype. Well, Skype figured out how to make money right off the bat. But Hotmail, we weren't making money. We were building distribution and we were breaking new ground. And when I came up with that idea of viral marketing, it spread to 11 million users in 18 months. That was unheard of before that. I mean, getting to 11 million users was a 40-year job for most companies. It took at least 40 years to get that many users. And this happened in 18 months. It was free service, but wow, that was like a major breakthrough. That was a unique model, and a lot of companies have used that model, and then they back it up. I mean, Facebook, I think, started with that model, but then they figured out how to make money pretty quickly. And if you are providing a good service, you can figure out how to put up some sort of a way of getting paid. If it is something like Hotmail, sure, go spread it as fast as you possibly can, because you know that distribution is going to be valuable to a lot of different companies who are making money selling some service or another. But Hotmail alone was running out of money when it was sold to Microsoft. We had to keep feeding it, and that wasn't. It wasn't easy to keep coming up with money to keep them alive, and it was more and more and more money to fill all those servers we were buying. But that's a little bit of the exception. I think in general, you should try to make money as soon as you start. And once you've figured that out, the sky opens up to you. If you're a company and you're profitable, you're worth so much more than a company that's losing money.
Yeah.
It's just because you've got all day. You can negotiate from strength. Mm-hmm. If you're losing money, you're watching, you're going, my burn rate is this, and I got this many months, and once I'm out of money, I'm out of money, and I better get out there and hustle and hustle and hustle and get some more money, and then you do that 2 or 3 times, and the venture capitalists lose faith. You're out of business, and all these people you've hired are all out of jobs.
Mm. What is
you didn't do them any favors either. Thinking, oh, I've employed all these people, and then your business hits a brick wall, and you got to let them all go. That is not doing anybody a favor.
So when we think about the technological waves that are upcoming, you've mentioned a few different ones. What is your vision of the world 15 years from now, and what do you want it to be?
It's interesting. They're both the same for me. My vision and what I want it to be are the same for me. I got to be a big beneficiary of the internet and the openness of the internet, and where governments went from being tribal to global, and the economy improved and everything was great. And I think the way to look at trade is, let's say you, Lisa, have a farm and I have a house, and that's all we've got. If I don't do a deal with you, I die of starvation. If you don't do a deal with me, you die of exposure. Multiply that by 8 billion people around the planet, and they're all interconnected in this free market. And they're all helping each other and doing great things. You take this pen probably was affected by 100,000 people, and was probably, there are probably 35 countries involved in making this pen. Your computer probably touched 1 billion people, and your smartphone probably the same thing, and probably touched almost every country in the world. That open system of trade and feeding the world and clothing and sheltering the world and these innovative products, entertaining the world and educating the world, all those things are interconnected and so powerful. And so the internet did that. Well, then Bitcoin came along and we had a global currency. So we could actually do business globally with the same currency. That was incredibly powerful. And all of a sudden it's super global. It's like, whoa, we can be super global and we don't have to be tied to some government currency or another. And about half the government said, whoa, this is awesome. Like, Japan made Bitcoin a national currency. And Malta made themselves the Bitcoin capital. And Switzerland tried to improve themselves. And all of a sudden, all these countries are going, yeah. And then there are the other ones who are kind of going, oh no, I lose control over my people. I want to control everybody. And that's sort of the socialistic view, like government should control everyone, as opposed to the capitalistic view, which is government should free people and allow them to operate, and they will know better what to do with their lives and their jobs and their money than I do in the ivory tower that is government. A good example of that is Korea. So there's a demilitarized zone, and it's kept the North Koreans separate from the South Koreans for about 4 generations. The North Koreans have been a socialist dictatorship where the government tells everybody what they're allowed to do. And South Korea is a free market capitalistic society, democracy, where the people figure out what's best for the people, and individuals are free to operate. The average South Korean is about makes about 400 times as much money as the average North Korean. That's one thing. But after 4 generations, the average South Korean, the average capitalist, is 4 inches taller than the average North Korean. So the North Koreans have been living a much worse life. They have been starving. They've been, poor, sheltered. All their healthcare is no good. And they are operated with government controls. So whenever anybody says, "Oh, there ought to be a law," or whatever, you're imposing your people, and you're hurting your people. When people say you should be free and open and have a great society, you are helping your society to become wealthier, happier, and healthier. So keep that in mind as you kind of move forward. So in a business scenario, what's happened is these governments, the good governments, have been going, bring it on, let's open, we're more open, let's have free trade, all that stuff. The bad governments are creating trade wars. They're clamping down on their people. They're saying stay in place. And they are creating a socialist world that is an impoverished world. The ones who are saying here's freedom, they're the ones 40 years from now that are going to be the wealthiest in the world. So keep that in mind as you kind of go forward. So now you have these, and you also have these sort of dying lions who are, it's like the roar of the dying lion that says, no, it's got to be tribal. We need this border, and we want to control people, and it's a big roar before the lion dies. And then the rest of us will eventually go global, and we know that's happening. So I have a vision of the world that is decentralized and global and open, where governments, just like businesses, compete for us. They improve their services for us. If we're paying too much or getting bad service, we move to another government. And that government can be virtual. You could have a government that's 11 miles offshore. I've seen 4 or 5 business plans for that. You can have a government that's up in space, and they can provide better service than the one that's geographic and tied to a land base. So I believe that we are going to have an anthropological leap. Humanity is going to have an anthropological leap, and I'm investing toward that anthropological leap. I'm investing in the decentralized world. I'm investing in Bitcoin, in the blockchain, in smart contracts, in decentralized governments, in new forms of government, liquid democracies. I am investing to what I want the world to look like. And I've done it all my life, and I've made a fortune. So do it yourselves. You want that world. I want that world. I want an open, transparent, global world with frictionless money that isn't tied to some government that can just print 13 trillion of them and suddenly your money's worth 20% less. I want an open government. And I want to be able to choose my government that provides me my healthcare insurance, that provides me my social security. I don't want that to be just because I happen to be living on some land base.
I love this term, liquid government. How do you, so you mentioned that there are a number of founders who are working on this. How do you then figure out the right kind of founder who's going to create this new type of government?
Well, we backed something called, we backed Aragon, which is creating in effect, a liquid government. They're creating a jury system with crypto, and so that's pretty interesting, Aragon. And then we backed Unstoppable, and you can go get a domain. You could get lisacarmen.crypto, and you can put whatever you want on that, and it can be global, and no one can take it down. So how they're censoring Facebook and a lot of pressure on Twitter to limit what they say, or the Chinese government is saying you can't say anything bad about the government. Well, with Unstoppable domains, you can buy a domain, say free Tibet, I don't like the dictator. You can say whatever you want, and no one can take it down. It's out there. It's decentralized. No one can take it down. These guys can't even take it down. The ones who created it, they created it to never be taken down.
Wow.
And so that's free speech for the world. I think that's incredibly powerful. How they've been, the press has been muting people and sort of saying, oh, you're not allowed to say this, or else we'll blame you, or we'll label you sexist or racist or this or that. That's gone with freedom. It's an open dialogue that you want in freedom. You have an open debate about things with freedom. When you watch that presidential debate, you could see those two people. They know something's wrong. They know it isn't working. They know something's wrong. They still are clinging to the past where they were tribal, but they both know something's wrong, and they just got angry and they started fighting with each other. You want a debate that's open. Like, I want to be able to say whatever I want. You should be able to say whatever you want. And if we disagree, we want to be able to come to some resolution. We want to both have some input into this resolution. That's what democracy was all about at the beginning. We don't want the press to tell us what we're supposed to think. We want the press to just be a reflection of us. And so I think that freedom, we're losing it in the U.S. if we don't do something about it. And so fight the censorship, fight the blocking, the blocking of voices. Make sure people can speak out. And then you're much better off. And whether they're picketing or marching or just speaking on a Zoom call, make sure you get to hear all those points of view, because you'll learn something. I'll learn from you. You'll have a point of view that differs from mine. I'll learn something from you. I'll say, oh, that makes sense. She has a different point of view. I have this point of view from having been a venture capitalist for a long time, traveled around the world, seen a lot of different things. She has this media company that she's building, and she's trying to make it work, and she's trying to invest her money and just getting started. She's going to have a different point of view. So I think that has to happen. Those, oh, by the way, we only have 3 minutes. So if there's anything else you want to ask me, go ahead and fire away.
Okay. Tell me about your biggest mistakes and most important lessons learned from investments that didn't yield the returns you wanted.
Okay, the biggest mistakes turned out to be not the investments that didn't return the money that I wanted. Biggest mistakes were the investments I did not make. And those were, I made a huge mistake. I knew Reed Hastings was a brilliant man, and he came to me with Netflix, And he said, well, yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to send videos on DVDs through the US mail. And I said, that's ludicrous. And I said, in 2 years, people are going to be streaming. Why would you ever do this? It's a waste of money. And he said, they're not ready for that yet, and we'll get them there. He just knew. He understood people much better than I did. So I miss Netflix. I miss Google because my partners all said, we've already got 6 search engines, and, we don't need another search engine in our portfolio. And so I make it very clear to people that if I back you, I will also back your competitor potentially. So be prepared. I missed, I got outbid on Facebook. I had, let's see. Anyway, I've missed a lot of them. And those were the ones where I went, oh boy, I made a huge mistake. And so what did I learn from that? Those were just huge mistakes. I learned that I don't know whether they're going to be good or not. So if there's any question in my mind, or if it's like controversial, I should just do it. But we've done very well too. So a lot of the investments that we've made were very controversial. I mean, boy, you should have heard the fights around Tesla and the battles we had around SpaceX, and how hard when Skype, I mean, that was an ongoing fight. Hotmail was, what are we doing? We're giving away money here. Twitch, the partnership turned down, and I did. So that ended up working well. And it was just weird, a guy going around videotaping his life.
The last question is, what is the most important takeaway you'd like to leave our audience with so they can become a confident investor?
Take the risk. Do it. Invest in what you want the world to look like. Take the risk. And then just live your life. Go out, live your life. Understand what it's like to live your life, because if you do, then you'll have more of an instinct for what products the world will like, because you will have experienced a lot more. So, go out, live your life. Government tells you to lock down. They're making a big mistake. Get out there. Do stuff. If you're worried about the virus, wear a mask. But get out there, do stuff. Meet people. See things. Makes you a better investor.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tim. This was an incredible hour, and I'm excited to go out and live my life and for you to do the same. So thanks again.
Good. I will. I'm about to get on an airplane now. Hey, send me the link and I'll send it out and maybe spread your word.
Will do. Be a few weeks, but
okay. Whenever.
Thanks again.
Okay.
Bye.